Hello and welcome back to Cupid. Oh god, guys, am I really narrating a scene of domestic violence? Oh god, okay. Professionalism. By now, Rosa had resorted to curling up into a ball and covering her eyes. She cried out her pleas, her vows of obedience and love. Do you have any idea how much I've sacrificed? What have I wasted my life for? To be stuck with a stupid child who doesn't know how to listen. I've told you time and time again, do not disobey me. Mother! I should have smothered you years ago. You're a curse. I do all of this for you, to protect you. And you repay me how? With lies and betrayal. I should have thrown you out the window, watched the crows feed on your remains. It's not too late, don't you think? Maybe I should teach you a harder lesson. Maybe I should leave you here right now and never come back. Worse than any physical pain, the girl felt a despair so big it made her heart burst, and Rosa clung to her mother's legs. Please, Mother, please don't leave me. I'll atone for this somehow, Mother, please. Please stay with me. You are beyond atonement, you dirty child. With one final stroke, Mother sent her spinning to the ground. The cross had hit her face, and Rosa tried to open her eyes, and she felt something warm trickle down her face. She lay on the floor, crying. Her tears mixed with the blood, and she wondered if Mother really was going to walk out of the house. She could still hear Mother's footsteps, feet thudding near to her head. At first they were hard and fast, then slow and hesitant. At some point in time, Rosa realized that the blows had stopped. She dared not raise her head from the floor, so she waited. Something touched her head. It wasn't a cross, but a soft, warm hand, and a sound of a sob. Darling, I'm sorry. Oh, I'm so sorry. Oh, what have I done? Rosa tensed, but she allowed Mother to sit her up, and the next thing she knew, Mother had wrapped her arms around her. She was still crying. You poor thing! I'm so sorry. Mother is so stupid. Her tears were genuine and mournful, and the sorrow in her eyes hurt 1,000,000 times more than any blow. I shouldn't have done that. The woman stared at her hands, and she dropped the cross as if it was spoiled meat. The girl let her mother hug her. It was her fault anyway. She had disobeyed Mother. She deserved the punishment. She drowned herself in her arms and felt the familiar surge of love. This was home. Home. No matter how broken. Life before Mother was a blur, and she was nothing without her. Mother looked into her eyes and touched her face, wiping away her tears. She locked her lips around hers and delivered a long, deep kiss. I love you so much, my darling. Please forgive me. I love you too, Mother. Don't cry. Oh, you're bleeding. Just wait here. Mother sat her on a chair and returned with a roll of bandages. She began nursing Rosa's head with a delicate care. I'm sorry, Mother. No, I'm the one who's sorry. Forgive me for what I said. You know I would never leave you, right? Even if you have committed the foulest sin, I would never desert you. I'll always be by your side. Thank you, Mother. I get worried, darling. You understand? Yes. I'm very afraid, always afraid. The woman's voice dropped into a whisper. A sudden, split second of lucidity. You scare me. She shook her head, forgetting the thought. Just obey me from now on. Promise. Mother knows what's best for you. Yes, Mother. Later on, at dinner time, Rosa's favourite dish was on the menu. The vegetable and meat stew with brown gravy that only her mother would make. Rosa tucked in eagerly, all the while feeling the cool bandage pressing tightly against her forehead. The event of the past hour had already seemed to fade away to distant memory, and Mother sat across the table also eating, and she seemed to be deep in thought. Mother? I won't see that boy any more. If he calls out to me, I'll run until he can't catch me. I know you will do the right thing, my darling. You didn't ask for all of this, did you, poor thing? If only your father was a better man. Here, Rosa pricked up her ears. It was rare to hear Mother talk about Father, even rarer to see her mention him so calmly. All throughout her life, Rosa had wondered about the man whom Mother had fallen in love with. Now it looked like she had the opportunity to glean a few more rare bits of information. Father? Was he good to you? Mother puckered up her lips and appeared to ignore this. Rosa decided to risk it and asked another question, tentatively. Did you love him a lot? Mother's eyes were somewhere far away. I don't know. No emotion, neither pain nor fondness registered on her face. But he certainly loved me, back then. Maybe. Now I'm smarter. I know better than to trust men like him. You too will understand when you grow up. The people who love you will hurt you the most, and you will only have yourself to blame. After all, you gave them permission to rearrange the awnings of your soul. Do not give anyone that permission. Rosa nodded, accepting her mother's teachings. Promise me, darling, when the time comes, when you meet a demon like your father, you will do the right thing. Deliver the punishment they deserve. Punish him. Even money says the mother killed herself. Because let's face it, anyone who flip-flops like that between beating her daughter half to death and then feeling incredibly guilty about it, that is a mental illness right there. So I'm strongly suspecting that the mother probably killed herself. I've also got this weird feeling that Guillemy's going to turn out to be her father, just because that feels like the kind of thing they would pull. I'm not saying it's definitely going to happen, but if it does, I will claim to have called it right now. Rosa's hands were over her head, and she pressed herself into a corner, panting. She'd never heard Mother this loud before. Punishment! This one was so loud it rattled around her skull, made her vision blur. Mother! What more do you want? The spell is already... She bent her head down, black spots creeping to the edge of her vision. She was so tired. You cannot hide anything from me? What is this doubt you are nursing? You're hesitating. You're crafting another spell. You stupid harlot! That filthy Marquis is exactly the kind of monster I have been warning you about. And you dare to plan behind my back? I just don't want to kill anymore, Mother. Any more? That's a very ominous turn of phrase. She couldn't help but answer back this time. How could she not? After years filled with love and acceptance, it made her realize all the more how precious life was. The thought of snuffing out someone else's life sent a desperate shiver through her bones. She had planned on running away from this place, abandoning whatever duty that now fell into her hands. Why was it her duty anyway? She just wanted to take the good memories of this place, taint them no longer. Whatever truth she sought wasn't enough payment for peace. I don't want to. Her voice shook. I don't want to kill him, Mother. I don't want to kill anyone, please. Is this cowardice or stupidity? You hate him, don't you? Look deep in your heart and you will find it, child. And there is deep love there, and there is burning hate. A hate so strong it compels to end a life. Yes, darling, let it burn in you. This is a fire that consumes the same way. Channel it. Use it. No, please. Rosa's head began to throb, and a vile sickness spread through her stomach. He took everything away from you, darling. He took Catherine. He will not stop. He needs to be punished. With this final proclamation, Rosa was struck to the floor. The feeling of fainting was stronger than ever. Alone in the dark, she lay there, panting like a sick dog, waiting for what would come next. Guillemy killed me. He made me love him, and then he betrayed me. He deserves death. Only you can kill him. I can't kill him. It's what I want. That's not true. It is. I want to see justice served. You'll do that for me, won't you, Rosa? My darling daughter. I could always count on you to do the right thing. So kill him. Kill Guillaume. Kill him. Promise me. Make him suffer. Stab him with a knife. Stick a dagger down his throat. Gouge his eyes out. Execute his sentence. Rosa clutched her head so hard she thought her skull would burst, and for a long moment she lay as though she were dead. 5 minutes, 10 minutes passed. And then, in the middle of the empty room, Rosa's voice rang out, clear as a bell. I understand. This is a deeply, deeply creepy game. Rosa knocked on Guillaume's door, carrying a tray of food. She had been poisoning his meals in small doses for weeks now, taking note of any ill effects it yielded. There had been none. Guillaume was still as fit and healthy as ever. No symptoms at all, even after she increased the dosage. Either he hadn't eaten anything for a month, or he was immune to poison. Both possibilities were suspect. Rosa knocked again. There was no response from the other side of the door. It may have worked. It was not a total loss, however. She remembered Catherine mentioning how particular Guillaume was with his sleep. Just as she had been about to give up, she had ventured on this hunch. It was true. Guillaume was, curiously, rather sensitive to sedatives. Rosa had offered rose tea to Guillaume that afternoon, under the guise that she had made a new recipe. It had been laced with opium and valerian, sweetened with honey to mask the taste. Whether or not it was the casting of Philia, he had drunk it without a second thought, and he had retired early that evening. Rosa noted the grogginess visible in his gait. She had snuck the master key this evening. Tonight was her night. Rosa pushed the door to his room open. It took a couple of seconds for her eyes to adjust to the darkness. It felt like a different world inside this room. By closing the door, it was as if she had cut herself off from the living. Rosa took an unsure step where she found her bearings. She placed the tray of food on the nearest flat surface, careful to not make any noise. The candle she lit provided little comfort. It seemed to cower from the intimidating blanket of shadows. Rosa heaved. The air felt humid here, the atmosphere almost stale. Now that she was inside and venturing deeper, a sudden impulse to find the door gripped her. She looked back, and it seemed further away. Why was she so anxious? She'd been in this room before, it was perfectly normal. Tonight, though, it was a different story. The room seemed to breathe. Rosa gulped. What a curious word. There was no other way to describe it, though. The flickering shadows make it seem like the walls were respiring around her. The room felt alive. It was asleep like its owner, but alive. And in the dim light of her candle, the red carpet looked like flesh. The furnishings were viscera. It didn't feel like she had entered a room at all, but a belly. Something darted in the corner of her eye. Rosa snapped her head. Just a curtain. Rosa let out the breath she was holding in her chest, aware that every move her body made, and she tiptoed towards the canopy. It was perhaps the highlight of the room, an organic monstrosity of red plush and velvet. From afar it didn't look like a bed at all, but a cage. The room was a cavern of meat. Then this was its heart. Rosa approached. Every muscle in her body was tense. She could see a figure sprawled on the bed, limbs sticking out clumsily. He was lying on his chest, back bare, clothes littering the floor. Guillaume seemed to have fallen onto the bed instead of climbing in. One of his arms stuck out from the mattress. Yes, I do keep slapping myself every time I yawn. I'm trying it as a form of aversion therapy. It's not really working terribly well. His breath was fitful but slow, a light snore coming from him. What was that? Rosa looked around for the source of the noise, but the room was still. A slow trickle of sweat traced her spine. Did that come from the window? Should she check? Rosa didn't move. Something was in the room with her. She could feel it. She stole a glance at Guillaume. He hadn't moved from the bed. Rosa's ear tried to pick up the faintest noise. Felt like hours of her staying frozen on the spot, wishing to blend with the darkness. But there was no one here. Ugh. She had probably imagined it. She took a deep breath and calmed herself down. The sooner she was out of this room, the better. Philia's effect would diminish once the candle died, and after that she might not have another chance. She had to find out more about him, tonight. The thought of her goal helped steel her nerves. Where should she begin? She took a step. Rosa darted her head, looking for the source of the skittering noise, and her ears were too sensitive now. She heard every creak and moan in the room. She took a deep breath. Focus. Rosa surveyed everything. There was a book by Guillemy's bedside table. It was only a couple of steps away, but she'd have come dangerously close to the bed. As much as she could, she'd rather maintain the distance between her and the creature on the bed. Creature. Why did she think that? Perhaps it was the arrangement of the sheets or the shadows playing their tricks, but Rosa shook her head. Perhaps there was another place to look. We've come here to gather information. You should check the book. Rosa sighed. Her mother was right. She had to check every source to be sure. She inched herself closer to the bed. Faint candlelight indicated that the book on the bedside was red. It wasn't the journal she had seen Guillemy write in. Rosa tiptoed her way closer. Guillemy's head dangled mere inches away. She reached her arm towards the book and swiped it noiselessly. The candle almost went out with a sigh. She backed away from the bed with the book under her arm. Adrenaline surged in her blood and almost made her smile. And Rosa examined her prize. A book in a foreign language. She remembered seeing such thin, obscure characters somewhere. She wasn't sure which country, but it was probably Asian. She flipped the book and saw a piece of parchment folded on one of the pages. A sailing permit for a barge named La Victoria, dated for the end of the month. 2 days from now. It outlined the cargo and the purpose of the trip with no date of return. Travelling? No. Leaving. Guillemy was planning to leave. There was a suspicion she had had since she started observing him. His sudden aloofness with the town affairs, the secret purchase of a ship, the decree of servants in his employ. Now it was confirmed. Just as well we found this. We must end it tonight, before he has a chance to escape. Although it was a good thing to confirm this suspicion, the fact helped a little. If anything, it just made it even more urgent to find something. Tonight. She had to continue. Rosa steadied herself and stepped back to the bed. Her hand finally brushed against the wood of the table, after some quiet fumbling. She caught sight of something shiny inside the drawer. Open it, child. Rosa pulled the drawer open, ever so slightly, and she peeked inside. Inside was an ornate dagger with a gold hilt set in rubies. An old, delicate pattern was carved on its blade. There was heat emanating from it, almost like it was alive, like the rest of the room. She almost missed it in the dim light, but there was also a key in the same cabinet. Keys are more useful. Okay. I was going to say keys are more useful than knives, but this is coming from a guy who owns 4 swords, a knife, and, well, a quarterstaff that I keep meaning to get round to buying either a spearhead for or an axe head for, but they ain't cheap. So take the key. Take the key. Leave that dagger. I have a bad feeling about that weapon. Leave it be. Rosa agreed with Mother. The weapon was as sinister as it was beautiful. She didn't want to touch it. Rosa took the tiny key into her hand, feeling the cool metal against her palm. She pushed the drawer back. Guillemy shifted. Rosa blew the candle out. She scuttled behind the small table, but it barely hid her. Guillemy had changed positions in his sleep. Now his face was in full view and facing her direction. Rosa's heart banged in her chest. It was so loud she was concerned the room might echo the sound and announce her intrusion. Rosa waited for a few minutes before moving. She decided to crouch down, holding the unlit candle close to her chest. Easy now. She shuffled away from the bed in relief. The candle was dead, but her eyes were now well adjusted to the darkness. She could make out a desk in the furthest part of the room. He must do most of his writing there. There's a huge chance his journal is near. It wasn't very dignifying, but Rosa decided to crawl towards it. Now that Guillemy's face was in full view, a flutter of the eyelid was all it would take to catch her. It would be better to minimize her risks. She dropped to her knees and placed her palms on the floor. She drew her hand back. Was she imagining it? When her palms touched the floor, it felt warm and wet. Her fingers were sucked into the floor as if she'd touched soft, pulpy flesh. The hallucination was so strong that her nose detected a spray of iron in the air. Her stomach heaved, and she rubbed her hand. There was no wetness or blood anywhere. The floor was solid. It must have been her imagination. Rosa touched the floor warily, patting it and pulling on the carpet fibres. It was just a normal carpet. Rosa let out slow, small breaths as she started to move once more. She padded her way to the desk. Every time her skin came into contact with the floor, bile rose up in her throat. It took some effort to resist the urge to gag. Finally, the desk was directly in front of her, and she looked back at the bed. From this angle, it was hard to tell if Guillemette had moved. She hoped the big desk had also hid her in its shadows. Rosa rummaged. There was no trace of the book on the tabletop. She found only a pot of ink, loose sheets of paper, and a quill. The damn thing had to be close. She opened the first shelf and found a stack of papers. Nothing. She shuffled through them, but the drawer didn't have the journal. She looked through the second drawer, and the third, but there was nothing of interest. Finally, she pulled on the last drawer, and it was locked. Rosa sucked the air through her teeth. Of course it's locked. How could I have been so stupid? Rosa slumped in a depressed heap. You literally just pulled a key out of his bedside cabinet. Use it. The key! Rosa looked at the key in her hand. She slid it into the hole and heard the lock click, and a deep feeling of relief washed over her. The drawer slid open, and Rosa looked inside. There it was. In her eyes, the green journal was a treasure, and she lifted the book from its resting place. It was heavier than she had expected, but Rosa smiled. She ran her hands along the velvet cover of the book, savouring the texture. At last she had it. Child. Mother's voice was riddled with anxiety. Something is wrong. Her excitement had clouded her senses, and almost at once she felt the change in the air. Everything was still. Her stomach shrunk into its cavity. Fresh sweat broke out on her scalp. This silence, it had weight. It pressed on her skin and made the air thin in her lungs. Rosa stood up. She had to leave. Now. Rosa shuffled her way out of the room, and with every step her legs seemed to stick uncontrollably to the floor. It slowed her movement. One more step. Her whole foot like sinking. She held onto a chair and staggered back. It was throbbing, musty and red, alive and without skin. The air was filled with the unmistakable stench of fresh meat. Rosa ran to the door. She didn't care that the handle seemed to curl around her fingers. She pushed the door open and spilled into the corridor. Rosa fell to her knees while she heard the door close behind her. It almost felt like the door had closed by itself. In her confusion, she couldn't be sure. Rosa's heart pounded heavily in her ribs. Just looking at the doorway of the room made her skin crawl. Rosa gathered her wits and stared at the journal in her hand. She hoped it would contain the information they needed. Chapter 6. Good Intentions. In the warm, dim light of the library, Rosa opened the journal's cover. She wasn't too surprised to find that a number of entries were written in different tongues. The dates jumped from decade to decade, the writing spanned centuries. Another suspicion validated. Guillemette was not human. Or at least he did not have a normal human lifespan. This discovery made Rosa search her mind for her date of birth. It distressed her that she could not remember. She shook her head and turned back to the journal. Despite the multitude of languages, the first entry was translated into several languages. For sentimental reasons, perhaps? Maybe a feeble attempt at reminiscing a more innocent time? I am learning to write. Aaliyah gave me paper. I like Aaliyah. She wants me to call her mother. She smells like oranges. She says I am a gift from the goddess, but I don't know any goddesses. Aaliyah calls me Ray. I guess that's my name now. It's nice to have a name. The other preceding pages were still in a different language. Rosa flipped through the pages until she came upon one that she could read. They call me Eros, a god, a divine. They don't understand what I am. They either build me statues or spit at my feet. But I'm a muse, a blight, a symbol, but I'm not the answer. It seems ironic, isn't it, that love craves love above all. That is what I need. That which I am poisons me to the point I am sick of its taste. 6th of May. I see it in the way that people look at me, the way they act around me. Some would, of course, think of me as blessed. I have youth, health, and the gift of being loved, but I have found that those gifts are curses as well. My youth forces me to always wander. My looks guarantee I will always stand out. And love, the very same urge that blesses me quickly turns rabid. Yet I understand why. Love. We all crave it, don't we? In the end, we are all drunk on the idea that only love could heal our brokenness. And they all think I am this cure. But I keep hoping there might be something else beside this twisted sentiment. There must be. Mustn't there? Rosa read the words and found them tugging at her heart. This was the same feeling she had had for years. It almost seemed as if the words were her own. Yes, as I say, I'm standing by my earlier theory. Assuming what's in this journal is accurate, he is an incubus. As I say, it's basically a mythological being that feeds on sex, to all intents and purposes. And while incubi in most legends target women, while succubi target men, more modern interpretations tend to assume that incubi and succubi are basically bisexual because they feed on sex. They don't really care which gender they're getting it from. Though obviously, again, that's down to each individual incubus's choice. I know I'm not supposed to be writing this. God forgive me, I do not want to write it down. If I do, it will be the truth. Oh Lord, please forgive me. I didn't mean to do it, I just wanted to stop hurting. I'm hiding now. I slashed my face and cut my hair so they would not recognize me. Pain. Pain is good. A penance. Oh Lord, please. If there is a God listening, please strike me down. That sounds familiar. Bad memories began to surface in Rosa's mind. Desperation. A cornered animal that fought back. Reminded her of her own sins. Her hands were drenched in red, yet here she was planning to kill another man. This had been her goal all along, hadn't it? That same familiar guilt began to stir in her mind. She bit her lip. Rosa skipped some entries. Most were garbled, almost incomprehensible. They were written in old ink, faded and unloved. Still, though they were melancholic, they painted a picture of a man with sufficient black humour to keep sane. November 28th. The plague has confirmed my suspicions that I do not die from sickness. I don't know how to feel about that. Everyone is dead. But on the bright side, everyone is dead. 7th of June, 1489. For decades I have searched for something in this life, and I am always disappointed by transience. What am I looking for? Meaning? Hope? Love? Death? Maybe. I can bleed. Wounds to the heart heal slower than the rest of my body. I think I may die if wounded enough. I have tried that. There was a time when seeing myself bleed was the only reminder that I am not numb. Yet my body does not form scars no matter how many times I draw my knife. Like any sign of age or ugliness, they all fade. A wrinkle today, gone the next. As if my body isn't even my own to brand. That is a shame. I want to mar my body so badly that anyone who sees me will flee. But I've tried that too. People are crueler when you are ugly. Why is that? Why do they feel the need to punish you simply because you are detestable? Perhaps because they can. Or perhaps it is easy to be cruel to those which do not belong. I don't belong. It would be nice to disappear one day. There it is. There is confirmation that he can be killed. So he bleeds like everyone else, but heals enough not to die. A strike to the heart. If we find a way to leave this wound open, perhaps he can be exterminated. Rosa continued reading. Another feeling was starting to grow in her chest. She began to question her cause more than she read the journal. I had been staying in the old March farm. They are good people. They invited me to eat with them, and it was in the warmth of their fire that I knew then that I must leave, or I will destroy their happiness. For the briefest of moments I was able to experience what it is like to be part of a family. Not an outsider, but accepted. Little Sissy has taken a liking to me, though. Children are curious creatures, a constant reminder of the humours of their own impending death, their own weakness and mortality. Yet people keep making them. One may wonder why, but it's not difficult to understand. It is the tantalising thought, the hope that no matter your past mistakes, you will be able to make something pure at one point, to watch it grow, watch it live. Such a poor thing. Looking up to you for love and care. It is both power and vulnerability, selfless and selfish. A curious thing indeed. Right, I think that's a reasonable point to end this part. Stretchy, stretchy. Joseph being at swords last night. Good session, though. Good session. Anyway, thank you very much for watching, and I will see you in the next part.